On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC Seattle main event between Henry Cejudo and Song Yadong. This is a stacked fight night card, and this is one of the big fights on it here. My name is James Lynch. If you've never seen this show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then I'm going to give you my prediction at the end of this video. Would love to get your prediction on this fight so we can debate it in the comments. And like we usually do, we will do a quick tail of the tape between these two. So it's a 5-round fight. Again, bantamweight division. Henry Cejudo 16-4. Song Yadong 21-8-1. 38 years old for Cejudo, 27 there for Song Yadong. And by the way, this is by the fight time that Cejudo will be 38, just something to keep in mind. 5'4" to 5'8", 67.5 to 67. So Cejudo with a little bit of a reach advantage. Song Yadong a lot taller, also a lot younger in this spot. Let's start first with the former champ, Triple C, Henry Cejudo, as we dive into his stats and talk a little bit about him. So again, this is an interesting fight. First time in a while that Cejudo has fought in a fight night card as opposed to fighting on a pay-per-view. And by the way, this is going to be taking place at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Washington. That's where the Seattle Kraken, the NHL team, plays. Cejudo, I mentioned it there, 16-4. He's got 7 knockouts, 1 submission, and 8 decisions. He's currently ranked number 7 in the division. He will have a 0.5 reach advantage in this spot. He's the former flyweight and UFC bantamweight champion. He's the only fighter to win an Olympic gold medal and a UFC title. He's a yellow belt in Shuriken Karate, and he trains out of Fight Readies. Mention it there. He's had 1 successful title defense at bantamweight. He's had 1 successful defense for his flyweight title. He is got fight of the night 1 time against Demetrius Johnson. He's got performance of the night 3 times against Wilson Hayes, TJ Dillashaw, and Marlon Moraes. Cejudo never had an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros, obviously with that wrestling credentials, and made his pro debut way back in March of 2013, made his UFC debut in December of 2014. He is 10-4 in the UFC. He's got 4 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include, and these were ranked opponents at the time, Yusuf Formiga, Wilson Hayes, Sergio Pettis, Demetrius Johnson, TJ Dillashaw, and then at bantamweight, Marlon Moraes and Dominic Cruz were some of the notable wins that he's had in the weight class. So not a ton of quality wins at 135, something to keep in mind. Some notable losses include Joseph Benavidez, Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson's still the only fighter to finish Henry Cejudo. He also lost to Aljamain Sterling and Merab Dvalishvili. The Sterling fight, close. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That was a split decision, whereas Merab a little bit more decisive. Cejudo's fought in multiple weight classes. I mentioned it there, obviously flyweight and bantamweight. He's fought 9 times at bantamweight. He's fought 9 times at flyweight. He's had 2 catchweight fights, which were both a result of missing weight. That was earlier in his career. He's had a lot of layoffs in his career. Let's go through some of them quickly because I do think it is important to sort of mention that. So obviously the big layoff when he basically retired after the Marlon Moraes fight, there was a 336-day layoff going from Marlon Moraes to Dominic Cruz. Sorry, that was before. Yeah, that was the first sort of retirement there. He ends up going that way. Then going from Cruz to Aljo, there was a 1,092-day layoff. So actually, sorry, it was the Cruz fight he retired. I think he retired the first time after Moraes and then fought Cruz and then didn't come back until 3 years later. So yeah, we hadn't seen him in a while. So the biggest layoff he had going was from Cruz to Sterling. That was again 1,092 days. Going from Aljamain Sterling to Merab Dvalishvili, there was a 287-day layoff. And then going from Merab to Song Yadong in this fight, 371 days. So the second longest layoff in his UFC career will occur when he has this fight. He's been in a couple close fights. We're not going to talk about the flyweight ones. Let's talk about the ones, just the one at bantamweight that he had, because again, this is the bantamweight division. The Aljamain Sterling fight, that was back at UFC 288 back in May of 2023. 21 media members scored the fight for Sterling, 2 scored it for Cejudo. I thought the fight was fairly close. I did think Sterling won, but again, you know, there were some people that did feel like Cejudo edged that one out. And I think that's important because, you know, you look at 2 losses here, maybe you're thinking Cejudo, you know, is done, but, you know, Sterling was the former champ. That's not a terrible loss to have on the resume. Let's go look at Henry Cejudo's stats real quick, and we'll talk about some other things. So if you look on Cejudo, his stats going into this fight are as follows. Significant strikes landed per minute, 3.77. His striking accuracy is at 46%. His striking defense is at 60%, so he doesn't get hit that much. That's something to keep in mind. 60% striking defense. His takedown average is 1.99. His takedown accuracy is at 32%. His takedown defense is at 75%, although I doubt Song's going to take him to the ground, and his sub-average is 0.2. So that is pretty much everything you need to know about Henry Cejudo and what he brings to the table. Let's now talk about his opponent. opponent, the Kung Fu Kid, Yadong Song or Song Yadong, depending on how you want to say it. Mentioned that they're 27 years old, 5'8" with a 67-inch reach, so he's 11 years younger and will have a 4-inch height advantage in this fight. He is currently ranked number 6. So people wondering about this matchup, Song 6, Cejudo 7, so not a huge gap there as far as the rankings. He trains at a Team Alpha Male. He's got Performance of the Night 5 times. He's got Fight of the Night 1 time against Cheeto Vera, and he's tied with Eddie Wineland for fifth most knockouts in UFC bantamweight division history with 5. Song Yadong also did not have an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros way back in May of 2013. So he makes his MMA debut only 2 months after Cejudo. That's kind of interesting. Made his UFC debut back in November of 2017. By that time, Henry Cejudo had 7 UFC fights, just something to keep in mind. He is 10-3 in the UFC. He's got 4 stoppage victories. Some notable wins for Song Yadong include Cheeto Vera, Marlon Moraes, and most recently Ricky Simone and Chris Gutierrez. Some notable losses include Kyler Phillips, Corey Sandhagen, and Piotr Jan. That was his last fight. Song Yadong hasn't really had any major injuries. And he's had a couple close fights that were a couple of years ago. We'll mention those anyways, just for the sake of, talking about close fights. So that fight against Kyler Phillips, that was a clear win for Kyler Phillips. Went back and checked that one out. The fight against Cody Stamann from a couple years back, this was 2019. It ended up being a draw. If you actually go look on MMADecisions.com, which is where the media can submit their scorecards, 10 media members scored the fight for Stamann, 4 scored it a draw. So most people felt like that should have been a loss for Song Yadong. Just something to keep in mind. Again, Stamann is a wrestler similar to Henry Cejudo, but obviously a lot has changed since then, and I think Cejudo, much better wrestler than Cody Stamann. And then there was the Cheeto Vera fight, which is a fight that he ended up winning. That was the fight after. 8 media members scored the fight for Song Yadong, 9 scored it for Cheeto. So again, a fight that he ended up winning. Some people felt like it could have gone the other way. Now, clearly he's leveled up since then, but his record could look a little bit different if those fights end up going the other way. So let's go look at the stats now for Song Yadong. And you can look at it there. His strikes landed per minute is higher than Cejudo, not surprising there. 4.49. His striking accuracy is only at 43%, so he's not hitting the target a lot. His striking defense is at 55%. His takedown average is 0.66. His takedown accuracy is at 40%, and his takedown defense is at 72. So that'll be put to the test against a really good wrestler here in Henry Cejudo. It's going to be an interesting matchup from that perspective, and also his sub average is 0.2 when you're sort of looking at the amount of submission wins there. Let's look at the odds right now. Again, I should have had this up ahead of time. So if you look at it there, Henry Cejudo. So we're getting the odds for UFC Seattle. One sec. Just going to take a moment here as we're sort of figuring that out. So you'll see right now, Song Yadong is the favorite. Right now, if they take the average of all the books right now, you can see Song Yadong about a -215 favorite. The comeback on Cejudo +165. So it's, again, you're seeing Song Yadong almost a 3-1 favorite, around a 2-1 favorite there. And then Tapology tells a similar story, although a little bit closer. They only have Song Yadong, and this is the fan voting, by the way. Song Yadong at 66%, Cejudo at 34%. Okay. Which way am I going in this fight? I did kind of talk about this when the fight was first announced, but I'm still going to stick with the pick that I had in that video, and that is I'm going with the upset here. I'm going with Henry Cejudo. So I get it, guys. Trust me. Like, there are reasons to like Song Yadong in this fight. Let me just preface by saying that before we dig into why I like Cejudo. So I get it. Cejudo is going to be 38. He's very old. There's clearly a good argument that he could be losing a step in this fight. He also hasn't fought in a long time, right? That's a bit concerning with him coming into the fight, right? So these are things that we have to kind of consider when we're looking at, Cejudo and what he's bringing to the table. And, again, I would say if this fight stays standing, you have to give the edge to Song Yadong. But the reason I like Cejudo is a couple things. So I mentioned Cejudo's layoff coming into the fight. Song Yadong has a 350-day layoff coming into this fight. So he has not fought since the loss to Piotr Jan. There were some fights that fell through. So that's a big layoff for him to deal with as well. I would argue that Song Yadong has never fought a wrestler like Henry Cejudo in his career. Cody Stamann, maybe the closest thing. Maybe you could look at some of the, I'm just trying to think if there's any other wrestlers here. Not really. Jan's got some wrestling, but not really to the ability level of a Henry Cejudo. And I think level of opposition really plays a role here. I think this kind of reminds me a bit of the Vicente Luque Tempo Garimbo fight, where everyone was convinced that Garimbo was going to win that fight when they're not looking at who Luque's losing to. Same thing here. You're talking about Cejudo's last 2 losses being to Aljamain Sterling, the former champion, and again, that fight was close, and Merab Dvalishvili, who we just saw beat Umar Nurmagomedov. Like, those are not bad losses to have on the resume. Another key thing I think is worth mentioning, because I do see people talking talking about Song Yadong by knockout. Henry Cejudo has never been knocked out at 135. He's been knocked out at 125, and that was ages ago against Demetrius Johnson. But do you really think Song Yadong's going to knock out Henry Cejudo in the spot? I don't. Even his last knockout win was a 5th-round finish over Ricky Simon, and Ricky Simon's a much, worse opponent in my opinion than Henry Cejudo. Again, I think Cejudo's been in there with better guys overall. I mean, you look at this run: Dominic Cruz, Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling, Dillashaw, Demetrius Johnson, even at flyweight. Like, he's been in there with some of the best. Song Yadong has fought some good opposition too, but he's lost. I think the theme we've seen in Song Yadong's career is when he gets that step up, he tends to lose his fights. Corey Sandhagen, I know that was somewhat competitive, but ended up losing that one. And Petr Yan, I think in his last fight, that was a good opportunity for him to shine, and he ends up falling through in that one. So yeah, I think there's absolutely value on Cejudo at the plus money you're getting him, right? Like I said, you're almost getting him at like 2-1 as an underdog, 2-1 underdog. I think that's worth it. And what I basically think will happen is I think Cejudo will win a decision. I don't think Song Yadong is going to land any major shots that are going to sway the judges. I think Song can win some rounds of this fight, but I think ultimately Cejudo will get some takedowns. I know Song trains at a great camp at Team Alpha Mill, where they certainly work on some wrestling, but I think Cejudo's wrestling is still fine. I still think he can compete at a high level. And I think Cejudo has proven time and time again that he is still a great fighter, even at his age here. So Henry Cejudo by decision is going to be my pick. I think he gets the upset, and I think he takes out Song Yadong via decision, 5 rounds at UFC Seattle. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. I know I'm going against the grain here, so tell me why you think Song Yadong's going to win this. And if you're on my side here with Cejudo, tell me what are some of the points you agree with me here. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching. This is Early Look. I'll see you next time.